Today we have Dr. Rosanne Symons in the studio with us. It's an absolute pleasure to have her with us. She was born and raised in Johannesburg and also studied medicine at UCT in Western Cape. She is a wife, she's a mother, and currently works as a trauma doctor in the hospital emergency unit in Durban. She also assists various surgeons with their operations and works in ketamine clinic with the suicidal and those suffering with depression and chronic pain conditions as well. And a core passion, however, is humanitarianism. So saving human lives and alleviating suffering wherever it is found. She has volunteered with a number of local and international NGOs as a disaster relief doctor in Syria, in Jordan, in Iraq, and in other countries. Rosanne is endowing also to learn Arabic, so that is so beautiful. And she's also passionate advocate for Syria and Palestine and other places where injustice and oppression occur. And we say that this war, or this genocide, it's not about anything else. It's clearly about good and evil. That's as simple as that. If you have a heart, there's no way that you can be okay with the genocide that is happening. So Rosanne, Dr. Rosanne, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on Urban Woman, and welcome to Radio Al-Ansar this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, share with us a little bit about your journey. What inspired you to get into the medical field and into this career?
I come from a long line of doctors, right from the 1800s. Somebody in each generation has been in medicine. So I think it was probably part of who I was made to be.
Part of your DNA, right?
In the DNA. And also, I mean, since a young age, I've loved biology, and I've loved being sort of helping people, but from a medical point of view. And then getting into trauma, I guess it was kind of also just in the genes, because I love working with a team. Mm-hmm. I love being in the team with the nurses and other members in the trauma unit, mm-hmm. and I like action. Right, so when there's sort of, adrenaline to be had and so on, then
there we go. And we need people with that kind of passion, adrenaline, heart, desire, wanting to make a difference. Tell us what actually prompted you to volunteer with local and international NGOs as well.
That's a bit of a story. I'll tell you the abbreviated version. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we'd be here for a long time. But obviously, being a white South African, mm-hmm. And growing up during apartheid, I was aware of, not at the time, but as I started coming to my senses, right. I became aware that I was living in a bubble of privilege. I actually had no idea what was going on in our country. Right. I know it sounds strange to those who are being oppressed, but really from someone who was coming from a family that was doing the oppression, yes, we were shielded, and it wasn't made obvious to us what was going on. And then through my university and days, I started coming to my senses and realizing the layer upon layer of horror and grief at what my people had done in this country, and how possible it was to stay in a bubble. Mm-hmm. And I sort of came to my senses, so to speak. I had what I like to call a never again moment for myself. Yes. Where I sort of just said to God, never again do I want to either be complicit in injustice or be oblivious to it through my privilege, through not digging deeper, not being aware of what was going on. And obviously trying to make amends this side locally, but also opening my eyes to what's happening in the world. And getting involved, always had a passion for disaster zones. I mean, when earthquakes or wars or anything are going on, it feels so difficult for me to be on this side of the TV screen. Yeah. I just want to be with the people and be there, suffering with them and alleviating, doing what I can, not in a savior way, more in a way that's in solidarity with them, coming alongside and serving in whichever way I can. So through that, obviously volunteered with Gift of the Givers.
Wonderful.
And went on a number of missions with them, and then started becoming aware, of the war in Syria in 2011. And I used to message Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman and say to him, Dr. Suleiman, we have to get involved in Syria. And he would write back and say, Rosanne, I know. We're waiting for God to open the door.
Wow.
And then I would be like, oh, you're so wise. And then at the end of 2012, beginning 2013, he messaged and said, Rosanne, God has opened the door. And that's a story for another day.
Wow. That is so wonderful and so inspiring on so many levels. And I tell you why, because, many perhaps choose to live by the saying ignorance is bliss. And yet you didn't. You chose to say, no, I cannot be part of this, because if I'm going to be complicit, basically, I am the enabler of what is going on.
100%.
And you have really taken such a strong, sincere consciousness point of wanting to make such an impact on serving humanity and not being part of the oppression system. So I can understand why as you're speaking, I'm watching your eyes, I'm watching your body language, I'm watching the energy, I'm watching the emotion coming through, and I can just see sincerity coming through. So share with us what actually motivated you to also learn Arabic, because Arabic, we read the Quran in Arabic, right? And many of us should actually make that intention to study that, because it's such a beautiful language. Having said that, it's not also a very easy language. So I take my hat off to you, because, masculine, feminine, all of those things that come through, but it's a beautiful language. But also, what motivation, how this also aligns with your work in the regions like Syria and Palestine?
So I think the most life-changing trip that I've been on was with Gift of the Givers to Syria. And I could literally talk nonstop for 3 weeks, not sleeping or eating, about that trip. It was just that moving, that incredible, that life-changing, that everything. But one of the major things that happened for me was just that I fell unashamedly in love with the Syrian people.
Right.
And working in the trauma unit, sometimes Dr. Suleiman would send us out into little smaller areas, and we would do like a pop-up clinic, so to speak, and being in a war zone with people. We obviously had interpreters, and they're incredible and such a gift. But I also feel like if you love somebody, you want to connect with them in their language.
Yes.
And learning a language also is so much more than just words. It's part of a culture, a belief system, a worldview. And I just felt, how can I better connect and relate to the Syrian people and the people of the Middle East in general. And so I endeavored to study Arabic. I'm definitely not going to say, and if my teachers are listening, they know I'm not fluent, obviously, and we're learning Fusha Arabic. So it's the real, it is a bit grammar heavy, I think, for me, because I would like to more just learn the communication, more the Amia type of Arabic. But nevertheless, so it's really helpful.
Would you like to say something for us in Arabic?
Salam. اسمي رزان. أنا طبيبة من جنوب أفريقيا، وأعمل في طوارئ في مستشفى.
Hey, mashallah. Yeah. So you made salam. I am Rosanne. So you say Rosanne, not Rosanne, right?
Anything.
Okay.
Rosanne, anything.
Wonderful. I live in South Africa. Right now we need subtitles. Tell us the rest.
The rest is just I'm a doctor and feminine form of doctor. Wonderful. And I work in the emergency unit in a hospital.
Wow. Listeners, people watching us on Facebook Live.
Sorry to my Arabic teachers if that wasn't great.
Hey, that was mashallah, I would say. Oh, that's so beautiful watching you. And you are doing such a great job. And I think an inspiration for many of us that we need to also learn the language of Arabic. It's so important. But obviously you said because you want to be able to connect with them. How did it feel for you finding out the news of Syria, how the freedom that has happened, that whole Assad regime. What did it mean for you? Because you expressed that you actually fell in love with the people of Syria. Share with us why first, and also hearing that news last year. What did that mean for you?
Okay, so when I say that I fell in love with the Syrian people, I'm not exaggerating. And it was a wonderful thing, but it was also very, very, very difficult years being here, and also the borders closed, so we couldn't actually go back into Syria. So it was more just supporting the people and loving them from afar, praying nonstop. I mean, people that know me, literally, I was obsessed. I still am.
Yeah.
So
really.
It was literally every day, every moment of every day. Even though I'm living here in South Africa, it is as if my heart
there
is in Syria, and my focus, all of that. So it was really, really difficult years, and literally, I don't even want to quantify how many tears I cried, but every single day.
Oh, wow.
Because so many of the people that we met when we went to Syria died, and their families, and the hardship and the besieging of towns, and the cruelty of those who were taken to prison. And anyway, that it's too much to go into on this short interview, but it was really very. And then COVID happened, and then also with Russia invading Ukraine, the emphasis fell off. The global emphasis sort of really reduced on Syria. But fortunately for me, having had contact on the ground and knowing people who were still there and people involved, I would go with other NGOs, Syrian American Medical Society or Med Global, into refugee camps in Jordan, in Iraq, and so through that was very much in touch with the Syrian people and the horrors that were going on there. And so when the freedom happened, it was extremely emotional and disbelief, I think, and just so grateful that it happened in such a non-violent way. After so much trauma, so much bloodshed, so many lives lost, so many lives altered forever. It was really incredible to watch, and just being in touch with my friends and their jubilation. Obviously, there's a long, long road ahead.
Indeed.
But just not being under the control of a dictator, a very viciously cruel dictator, and one that lies and spreads terrible lies to the media and lies to the world and propaganda and so on. So to just let the Syrians, let their stories be told and hear about the pain and the loss and so on has been beautiful to see, and see them meeting up with family that they hadn't met up with for so long, and coming to terms with some of the finding out family members that had been tortured to death in the prisons whom they had known nothing about. So just for them to get closure and go back and see the ruins of their homes, but at least they can see it and be there. And so it's been a very emotional, since the 8th of December. Yeah.
And to think that so much is going on to innocent people that didn't deserve any of that.
Really.
Which brings us now to Palestine, of course. This genocide has been the worst ever, I think, that the world has seen. And to know that, okay, fine, finally there's this announcement of the ceasefire. And from what you're describing of Syria, snippets of what we've seen on happening in Palestine, like you've been firsthand to Syria, we're watching things, obviously, thank goodness also for the social media, and everything has its pros and cons, but had it not been for social media,
100%.
we would not be, as you know, the media is indoctrinated as well. So what would you say that this ceasefire also means to you?
Well, I think so my involvement in Palestine really started through my involvement with Syria, and just learning more about the Middle East and trying to understand, because another downside of coming from sort of a very privileged and apartheid era sort of generation, is that even your history and your worldview is tainted by that. So what you know of the world and the way you've seen is actually, you don't realize the lenses through which you see it.
Correct.
And so it was such a privilege to see things from a different perspective, and then start meeting people and getting to know people, and go to Palestine and hearing the stories and seeing the apartheid firsthand, and seeing the hardship and the deprivation and the cruelty at the checkpoints, and going through the checkpoints myself, and knowing people in Gaza and knowing people in the West Bank has made these past 15 and a half months almost unbearable. It's just been every day just thinking the weight of cruelty, the weight of hardship, the weight of atrocities.
Absolutely.
The grief has threatened to overwhelm me. And just seeing day after day, painful, cruel, atrocious, week after week, month after month, going on, and seeing no end in sight, and knowing what it's doing to the children and the moms and the dads and the people in terms of trauma and in terms of their is just it's literally unbearable. And it being live streamed, which I'm so grateful for, so that we can bear witness.
Yes, correct.
But it has been really tricky trying to lead a so-called normal life, whatever that is, life, while there is a genocide going on with people that, whether you know them or not, but I do know people there, but whether you know them or not, it should move us in the same way, has been really hard. So with the announcement of the ceasefire, I just sobbed for hours. And I think it's more from the point of view of knowing that people can just take a breath and not be in sheer terror that they or their babies are going to die or be bombed, although there have been breaches of the ceasefire. So we understand it's completely, it's not total, but there is a small reprieve, so that people, human beings can somewhat breathe and start to process the grief and what has been taken from them, what has happened in these 15 months.
That's true.
So it's a relief, but it's not like I don't feel concerned for the people, or that I feel like their problems are not over, and the situation has not changed in terms of the oppression and the apartheid and the colonial forces that are pitted against them. So while I'm grateful, and so grateful to see, although it's also again very moving, or actually not even moving, very devastating to see the pictures of the people that have been released from prison. I mean, I'm glad for all hostages to be released.
Yes.
It's not nice for anyone. We understand that. But just seeing the good health and the ability to smile on the faces of the Israelis that were captured and being released now to their families, versus the traumatized, emaciated, tortured bodies that are being brought back to the Palestinian people.
Absolutely.
That's really hard to bear.
That's the thing. Even when the exchange is happening, I'm not sure if you've even seen, as you're saying, the Israeli, what can I say, those that were taken in, when they released, they were actually given little gift bags as well. And you can see they are well. They're smiling, they're fine, they don't even look traumatized. Whereas the Palestinian prisoners that were released, it's like, you can see, and they're even expressing to their mothers, thinking they're never going to see their family, but even talking about how they've been tortured, fearing death. And one can only imagine what happened behind those closed doors, where our cameras couldn't reach it, or any of the cameras could reach it to share that with us. Horrifying if what we could see was so dehumanizing, horrifying on another level. And we feel you, because I think, went through that same motion when you heard about the ceasefire deal, because remember, they still have their steps and all of those things. They just want to make life so unbearable for Palestinians. And we know that they're not just going to leave them and everything's going to be hunky-dory. Open air prison, but you cry. Like, I was also overwhelmed with tears. I'm thinking, now where? Now where do they go? And what do they do? They're not going back to their luxury, their comforts. And what next? But when you watch the Palestinians and the ability to smile, and I think this is what really irks what can I say, the invaders of their land, because it's like, we've done so much to you. How do you still have that ability to smile and still have the determination, knowing we've done so much to you and your people, killed, bombed, and also, you as a doctor watching the very many diseases that are there, the problems that people need, the children not having limbs and arms, and, thinking that they're going to grow up into adults, and what kind of a lifestyle they're going to have, and what is their future generation going to be like. And there's so much work to be done there, but their resilience, their tenacity is just on another level that inspires me. As much as it makes you feel a bit hopeless, it's like watching them kind of gives you hope, the irony of it. You've been doing wonderful work, and I think it's been wonderful listening to you, coming from, as you expressed, you could have just basically turned a blind eye, lived in your luxury life, all your privileges, and as I said, ignorance is bliss, but you chose not to. You chose to live in a state that what will please God, which I think is so important. And this is what I said, brought about from the world, where you can clearly see that segregation, people with a God consciousness and one that don't have one, because that's when you cannot swallow just observing what you see. As we wrap up today, what are your take-home message or your words for our Urban Women listeners this morning?
Oh, that's a big one. I think I've probably got a couple. The one thing I think is that, being a wife and a mother myself, I think we shouldn't give in to the idea that it means then you can't be involved in other things.
Correct.
And while it is important to be a present parent and to love being a parent, it is a privilege and an honor, and and it does bring joy and all of that. But it doesn't mean that needs to be our only focus. We can, and there's so many things. And also, another thing I'd like to say is, hearing perhaps about my involvement in the Middle East, one shouldn't need to feel that you have to do something huge or like out, that's beyond you. There are so many things and needs that are present, that are right here in our communities.
Correct.
But what I find is that it makes your life so much more meaningful and so much more fulfilling. And you are able to be present when you are able to see the suffering of other people or see the needs. It can be even the needs of cleaning the beach.
Yes.
Or the lady that perhaps works in your home. Does she have water? Advocating for the rights for in the area that she lives in.
Correct.
Or it can be family members that are needing support. So it doesn't have to be like huge out there, and then you disqualify yourself and you think, well, I'm not at this, or I can't do that.
Yes.
Get involved in something that will brings us closer to God, because we get his heart for these people, for the dignity in people and even in the earth. And then it's so rewarding and fulfilling, and makes the hardships or the so-called suffering that we have in our lives more bearable.
Absolutely. Self-humanity. That's what we also taught in our beautiful religion as well. It's about religion, it's about race, it's not about color, it's about humanity. So self-humanity, beautifully displayed by you. You are true inspiration, and we thank you as well for coming onto our show, sharing your story, sharing your passion. And, I think it's people like you that actually help to make a difference, and also reminding us that no matter what, we can all make a difference, and we don't have to go big. It can be in your own little community. Often we see people want to do the big things out there, but within their own sphere and their own little circle, there's a bit of hypocrisy going on. Dr. Rosanne's been so wonderful having you on Urban Woman. Thank you so much for your time. Until we connect again, it's time for us to wrap up. 11:58 is the time. We have to go for a quick ad break, and then I'm going to say bye to my fabulous listeners. Urban Woman brought to you by Checkers Food.